They say we only get one great love in a lifetime. Maybe that's true for most people, but not for me. I had two. One I married, and one I met every Tuesday for 7 years, while still wearing my wedding ring. My name is Margaret Evans. I'm 72 years old, and I've lived in the same small Indiana town for most of my life. My house sits 2 blocks away from the elementary school all 3 of my children went to. There's a porch swing out front that creaks when the wind hits it just right, and the attic still smells like the cedar chest my husband, Frank, built in 1981. Frank and I met in church youth group. He was tall, polite, the kind of man your mother hopes you'll marry. He never shouted, never cheated. He brought home a steady paycheck and grilled burgers on Sundays. We built a life full of structured kids, mortgages, PTA meetings. We had Christmas traditions, matching pajamas, and dinner at 6 sharp. It was a good life, but it wasn't a full one, at least not for me. Frank was kind, but quiet. So quiet, in fact, that sometimes the silence between us felt louder than any argument could have been. He didn't really see me. I don't mean that he ignored me. He just didn't look. He didn't ask what books I was reading. He didn't notice when I changed my hair. He never once asked me if I was happy, so I stopped asking myself the same question then. I turned for 7. The kids were grown. Frank had gotten even quieter in retirement. I was restless. I didn't want to have an affair. I wasn't looking for anything at all, honestly. I just wanted something to look forward to. So I signed up for an oil painting class at the local community center. That's where I met him. Henry Caldwell, 53, divorced, taught art part-time, and lived in a tiny house with too many books and a backyard full of overgrown wildflowers. He had paint under his nails and the most attentive eyes I'd ever seen. When he looked at you, it was like you were the only person in the room. He saw things in people, little details, and then reflected them back at you in a way that made you feel luminous. The first time he spoke to me, he didn't say anything profound. He just said, "You've got gentle hands. I bet they've made a lot of things in this life." It was a strange compliment, but it stayed with me. After class, he asked if I'd like to stay behind and help him clean up. I did. It started slowly. Conversations that lasted longer than the cleanup. Coffee down the street, walks in the park. He'd bring me fresh peonies from his garden. He told me I reminded him of the women in old paintings, not because I was beautiful, but because I looked like I'd loved hard and carried it quietly. One day, I asked if he'd paint me. He didn't answer. He just set up a canvas and said, "Hold still." That was the first of many afternoons. Tuesday afternoons. I never stayed the night. I never kissed him. But those few hours, those secret, golden hours, were the only time I felt like myself. He never asked me to leave Frank. I never pretended I would. Sometimes we just sat in silence. Sometimes he played old records. Sometimes I'd read aloud while he painted. And always, always he looked at me like I mattered. It wasn't lust. It wasn't rebellion. It was sanctuary. Frank never questioned where I went on Tuesdays. Maybe he knew. Maybe he didn't want to know. We'd built a life of mutual blind spots. He didn't ask. I didn't tell. And to the outside world, I was still a loyal wife, with a perfect attendance at Sunday service. But inside that little yellow house with the creaky porch, I was someone else. I was someone whole. Then, one Tuesday, Henry didn't open the door when I knocked. I found him on the floor of his kitchen, conscious, but pale. He smiled weakly and said, "I was hoping you wouldn't come today. Guess God wanted you to." He was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. He looked at me the way he always did and said, "I don't want to spend what's left being pitied, but I wouldn't mind if Tuesdays stayed the same for a little while longer." So I stayed. Every week, for 3 more months, I watched him shrink into his clothes, his voice get thinner, his laugh quieter. He stopped painting, just watched me sit there, brushing crumbs off the table, arranging flowers in a jar, humming along to Nat King Cole. One week, he asked if he could hold my hand. That was the first time we touched like that. A week later, he was gone. He didn't have a funeral, not a formal one, just a small gathering of artist friends. I didn't go. I wasn't invited. I had no official role in his life. But a week after his passing, a box showed up on my front porch. No note, no address, just a small wooden crate. Inside were 15 paintings, all of me, one for every year he imagined we might have had together. At the bottom was a single card that read, "If the world had met us sooner, I would have married you. Instead, I loved you in silence, in color, in every Tuesday." I kept that box hidden in my closet for 2 decades. Frank passed 5 years. After Henry, I stayed by his side through every hospital stay, every chemo appointment, every long night. I was the wife he needed me to be. And now, here I am, an old woman with gray hair and shaky hands. No one in my family knows about Henry until today. I'm not telling you this for sympathy or judgment. I don't need forgiveness. I made my choices, and I made them fully awake. But I do want you to know this. Sometimes the love of your life doesn't show up on your wedding day. Sometimes he shows up in the middle of a long, quiet life and only stays for Tuesdays. And that love, it's still real, even if you can't speak it aloud. Let me ask you something. Have you ever loved someone you weren't supposed to? Have you ever had a Tuesday love, the kind you carry in your heart, even if no one else ever knows? Would you have made a different choice than I did, or the same? Let me know in the comments. And if this story touched something in you, subscribe. I've got more stories. We all do. This is a safe place to share them.